Welcome to the True North Fantasy Football Podcast.
What up, fantasy people? Live on the TNFF network. This is the True North Fantasy Pod. I am Trav. As always, I'm posted up in Dirty Laundry Studios. You can find me at TCL14 on Twitter. And the whole crew's content can be found at truenorthffb.com. And of course, back in the house tonight, we've got the True North research demon himself, Tyrell McLaughlin. You can find him at TNFF Tyrell. Ty, what's going on, playa?
Same old, same old. Another exciting episode with some excitable guests. And you speak of the Dirty Laundry Nation. We're going down to Dirty South Nation here with these boys.
Absolutely, we are. Yeah. So week 6 is in the books, Ty. My Eagles in the NFC East is still garbage. Your Steelers mop the floor with the Brownies. Tua time is upon us, and the Falcons finally got off the schneid with a coaching change. And that brings me into our guests. Really fired up for these boys, a couple of OG supporters of True North since pretty much day one, fellas. So in the theme of the Falcons, we got our own Falcons insider, one of the co-creators of Sons of Dynasty. That would be Daniel Brown. You can find him at D.Brown FF88. D, what's going on, my man?
What's going on, guys? Pleasure to be back on the show. You guys are a couple of my favorites in the industry. So anytime I get a chance to come and spit a little bit on the True North podcast, I get pretty pumped up about it.
Beautiful. I can't wait to hear that spitting, my man. And speaking of, we got another close friend of True North. We got Nic Richardson at Fantasy Spinoff on Twitter. Nick, how's it going, buddy? It's been a long time coming. It's been a pleasure to meet you and ready to chop it up.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. We've been trying to do this for a couple weeks now. Pretty good evening. Glad we're not talking about my boys down here because we are struggling too.
Yeah, I did a quick mention there of the NFC East because I did not want to talk Cowboys, and I figured you might not want to talk about, or I didn't want to talk Eagles, sorry, and I figured you might not want to talk about Cowboys either right now. So
there's no need.
No,
yeah, it's going to be a good show, boys.
20% of all turnovers in the NFL this year have come from the NFC East.
Nice, right on. You're going right off the show sheet on the hop there, Ty. Thank you.
Hey, D.Brown, I wanted to point out, just because of Justin Jefferson's amazing ascension, that I think of you almost every time he has a blow-up game. I mean, there is a couple of people out there for sure, but you were one of them, just a Justin Jefferson rooftop shouter in the offseason. Also, a James Robinson fantasy friend, and a Jermichael Hasty whisperer. So you must have some pretty good dynasty rosters out there.
Well, I mean, essentially, those late round running backs, man, rounds 3 and 4. I'm trying to soak up rounds 3 and 4 picks in dynasty, and every single one of those is going to be a running back dart. No player in dynasty will ascend in value quicker than that running back. And James Robinson, perfect example, easy late 3rd, 4th round guy, and people are moving him for first rounders. I just sold James Robinson James Robinson for Justin Jefferson and a 21 second.
Damn.
Yeah, I bring up the dynasty. I know that you have some good dynasty leagues because one of them, D.Brown, I wanted to mention in case you didn't know, because it is hard to keep track of all these leagues these days. But one of them we're in together. It's that Gong Show League, D.Browner. And me and you play in week 12, and I'm telling you that's going to decide first place in the season standings. Both of us are 5-0 in that league. My only loss in that league this year, you guys, was to you, fine sir D.Brown, week 1 by 2 points. So I'm coming for you, buddy.
Dang.
In that league, I was struggling. I had Jameis Winston as my QB2 last year, and so essentially lost
good
him.
Last year.
Didn't have another quarterback, but somehow you guys let Herbert fall to me. I think it was in the early second. Okay,
just egregious.
Nice.
I made a trade for Tyrod, threw a 3rd or a 4th to somebody, limp by with Tyrod for a little while, and now here it is with Herbert. I'm lighting it up. I couldn't be more ecstatic about that right now.
Yeah,
That's
until week
awesome.
12 comes. And I know Nic Richardson, new friend of the show for sure, newer. But I know you're a big Cowboys fan, so we have to have you back on at some point to talk Kellen Moore, CeeDee Lamb, some of the other TNFF heartthrobs. Also talk about the not so fun stuff in Dallas, like the demise of the O-line. Ezekiel Elliott having 0 100-yard rushing games this season. 6 straight games, longest streak of his career. So anticipatory invitation is already sent, Nick. And for those of you who don't know, Nick, you do weekly top 12 positional rankings. They're pinned to your Twitter. And those are really, really useful. If you want to not have to battle through consensus rankings or stuff, there's rankings top 12 by position on the pin tweet at Fantasy Spinoff. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on, guys, both of you guys.
Yeah, of course.
All right, fellas. So real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes on the episode, I did mention Tua time at the top of the show as well. And before we get into it here, I just want to let any of the listeners or the viewers know to hop onto Ty's page at TNFF Tyrell, because Ty did a really, really good thread breakdown of Tua and his insertion into the lineup for the Dolphins. So make sure you go check that out. Ty's got lots of threads like that, and I promise you have never seen threads as thorough as the ones that Ty rips out there. So make sure you go check that out and give him a follow. But Nick, as far as Tua goes, I want to get your thoughts on it first here. What do you think about Tua in Miami getting the starters role after that bye week with Ryan Fitzpatrick playing pretty well?
I think he might have just done that because I told you I was a little sensitive after trading away my own Tua share. I didn't expect it. It caught me all the way off guard. I don't know if anybody really expected, because Fitz has been pretty good. Like, not really any complaints. He's been slinging it pretty good. It's basically what he always does. I like to see it. I'm ready to see Tua go. He's picked up a few weeks, kind of seeing how the actual NFL plays. I think he's going to be okay. I'm pretty excited to see it. He's obviously a top-tier quarterback coming out of the draft last year, so he's got enough weapons around him to be acceptable going into fantasy. Does that turn Dolphins wins? We'll see. I don't know about that quite yet, but I think he's going to do fine. The dude is a phenomenal human. I'm pumped about that.
Yeah, it was really cool to see those pictures of him sitting in the middle of the field like an hour after the game, just kind of soaking it all in. I actually showed my wife too, just because I was just thinking, like, being that young and just going in and throwing your first NFL passes after a devastating injury must have been a pretty cool feeling for him. So we're really stoked for him here. It kind of sucks for Fitz too. D, what did you think about the Tua insertion? Do you think it was maybe too soon to yank Fitzpatrick, or was it a good move to get the quarterback of the future in there?
No, I tweeted out my kind of initial thoughts on it. I kind of like the move by the organization. This is an organization that has made moves to move forward, and obviously they see Tua as their future. And while not wanting to rush him in, especially with the injury that kind of brought his stock down a little bit, even in fantasy football community. They didn't want to rush him in there, but he's been cleared. He's kind of gotten familiar with an NFL system at this point. Obviously the Dolphins love what they've seen out of Fitz. He's been straight slinging it, but they're thinking about the future. They're not actually looking for a run at this point, so they're thinking what's most beneficial to our team. And if that's Tua getting a little bit wet behind the ears instead of going into next season and then trying to see what you have, get him out there, let him get some experience, let these pass catchers, develop some chemistry with him. And that way you can really truly evaluate the pieces around him moving forward.
I think that's perfectly said, man. Ty, why don't you finish off the Tua talk here before we get into the meat?
Yeah, I'll make sure I don't go down any rabbit holes here. I think we're all just kind of trusting Brian Flores, right? Like, we're going to let him make that call that he's evaluated properly and that, Tua is ready to go. So from a reaction standpoint, I'm not sure why people seem to think this is a lateral move. If the coach, who we actually like, Brian Flores, and he's a very interesting coach, somebody I'm actually trying to tie to in the long term. And it really comes down to just the Fitz magic. It eventually always wears off. He's only been he's started 6+ games over 12 times. And he's had a losing season in 11 of those 12 years. God knows how many teams are in that sample there. But my point is that I think this is a lateral move. Sorry, it's not a lateral move. It's definitely I think it brings a new upside, like when it comes to the deep
Mhm.
passing arena, when it comes to the red zone, because we know the Dolphins are shockingly leading the league in red zone trips right now, but they have under a 60% touchdown rate in the red zone, which is actually bottom 10. So Tua coming in, I think we'll see some of those deep ball completions come to fruition, and I think that really helps Devontae Parker. That really helps Preston Williams. I think check out that thread. I really get into some Preston Williams nuggets there. And I think Mike Gesicki is definitely a buy, and in the long term, it's just so encouraging to see somebody who has taken a little bit of time, like athletic tight ends do, now have a quarterback that he can grow alongside of, for the foreseeable future. And those two can mature together and build that chemistry and rapport. And go buy Myles Gaskin. Even before this, he was one of the biggest buys in fantasy football. He has the most catches in the entire NFL without a receiving touchdown. And he's due for a ton of positive rushing touchdown regression as well, because Jordan Howard's been inactive since week 5, and he's taken over that goal line role. And I think that's, I get into that red zone stuff. That's a role that's going to become more valuable going forward. So I think Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki are guys that you can buy while they're on buy. And Myles Gaskin is somebody that I'm actually buying high on.
Nice, yeah.
And Tua will be good. Tua will be good.
Totally. He'll be efficient. I think there's, to me, I think there's probably going to be a couple of bumps and bruises here and there, but he's a rookie. I think it could be kind of like what we're seeing with Justin Herbert, where he comes in and, like you said, Ty, brings just a new element, a new excitement into that offense. So we're excited, man.
And I think that's why they're doing this specifically on the bye week, right? Is so they can acclimate the entire team to a quarterback change. They can implement some run pass options, which is what we're really excited to see in Miami. And I'm not saying that the RPOs are going to lead to a ton of rushing production from Tua, but it's going to be, it's going to be a much more efficient offense, and there's some built-in efficiency when it comes to linebackers having to make those decisions. And no one's saying Tua is going to be a quarterback 1, but a top 20 quarterback is pretty safe, I think, even in 2020 here.
For sure. I'd like to say what up to our buddy Josh Smoky Hell Nelson, who's got a big heart for Tua there. And then boys, Beezy stepped in and he's throwing verbal bows here. He says, "Gong show is mine, bitches," is what he says. So I'm not in a position to say anything because I'm 2-4 in that league. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and grind my way into one of those last playoff spots. But it's going to be a fun one. Beezy, that's definitely for sure. We love you, buddy. Okay, boys. So before we get into, we are going to actually, I didn't even talk about all the topics we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to unpack a few team situations. We're going to get into the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends of some of these teams that are interesting across the league. We're going to do another segment of I Got 5 on it with Monkey Knife Fight. And we are going to take a couple of listener trade questions. So I thought that'd be fun to do. We haven't really done that a whole lot on the True North pod. So kind of a little added variety to some of our content. And we're pretty stoked for it because it's funny. I break down trades with these 3 guys all the time. We're always talking in group chats and stuff and floating ideas and stuff. So it's pretty funny to get into it on the pod here. But real quick before we do that, guys, I just want to say a word from our sponsors here. Expand the Box Score is the essential database for stat heads like us. With NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, and even minor league baseball, they've got something for everyone. We use their NFL and college football bundle for lots of our deep dives, and you can find stats on there that you can't find anywhere else. The college football database specifically is invaluable in the offseason as you try to prepare for your rookie drafts, and you'll find something new every time you log on. If you want to start doing some data digging, head over to expandtheboxscore.com and use promo code TrueNorth10 at checkout to get 10% off. Again, that promo code is TrueNorth10 for 10% off. Expand the Box Score. Superior stats to dominate fantasy football. All right, fellas. And just on the note of that video, I want to give a big shout out to our man Dan Made Graphics for hooking that up. He did some really nice work on that, and he's just done some really nice work on just the look and feel of our brand overall over the last little while. If you see the banner there, you can see the logo down there for Monkey Knife Fight with that cheddar sticking out. So that's all Dan Made Graphics, and we love you, Dan. We got Brian here saying that it's a slick ad. You're damn right it is, Brian. You are damn right it is. Okay, guys, so we're going to get into some of these team situations. We're going to unpack a couple. We got 3 teams on the docket just to give us a little bit of room to breathe and have some conversation about that stuff. And the first team that we're going to get into, as Ty mentioned earlier in the show, is in the Dirty South. We're going to go do the Dirty Bird with the Atlanta Falcons, baby. Been a rough season.
Over management.
Intro National Underground.
Is it time to ring the alarm?
Totally.
Jermaine Dupri. Sorry.
Yeah. Always some good hip hop references on the pod too, boys. So
there's lots of good hip hop in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
Like I could
aliens.
Could have rocked some old Ludacris. Maybe get some growing pains going. Some
T.I.
T.I.
Growing pains. Haven't heard that in a while. T.I. is fantastic.
Ray Charles is the Atlanta GOAT, though. We should make
to
sure
move into like the R&B
listeners.
realm. As far as R&B goes, Usher's from down there, I believe. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's another feather in the musical cap for.
Well, they need something because they can't really win sports championships, you know. So they need something in Atlanta.
That's fair. That is fair. But they got a win. They got a win. Coaching change. They got the W against the Minnesota Vikings, who look pretty rough aside from those receivers. We're going to talk about this team, guys. We've got Todd Gurley in the running back role. We got some slick wide receivers, some big expectations for the tight end that they brought in, of course, but we're going to start in that backfield. And Nick, we'll start with you because D.Brown talks a lot of Falcons, I'm sure, and he will get his. But we're going to talk a little bit of Todd Gurley. And the title I've got here is he rejuvenated or is he fool's gold? So he's the RB14 right now, which is not bad. He is top 10 in rushing attempts, but the targets have hurt being outside of the top 25. So do you think, Nick, like he is fully rejuvenated in Atlanta, 75% rejuvenated? Where are you sitting on Gurley?
I think 75 is probably a pretty good spot. I think he is at least a little bit rejuvenated from what he looked like with the Rams. He looks pretty decent. He's got a little bit of juice. We saw a couple long bursts from him. I've got him on a handful of rosters, not too many, but he looks pretty solid. You know, I have no issues with him, and any of the rosters that I have him on, he's more a flex for me. I always took him as like an RB3-ish because there's questions going into the season, but I think he looks fine. I expected kind of what he's doing to what he's going to do for the whole year. You know, I think you're going to be irritated with his yards per carry and all of these things. You know, if he gets a touchdown, you're going to be happy with what he puts up for the week. He's going to give you 14, 16. He might give you the random 20, but I'm not that concerned with his catches because I think the last 2 weeks, I think he had 4 and 5 targets or 5 and 6, something like that. I can't remember. And I think a lot of that has to do with the offense and the team kind of changing, like, you know, week after, you know, Dan Quinn's gone, receptions are there. So that's a nice little pickup from them. Totally. You know, I expected the same. I expect, especially the next couple of games. Like if D.Brown can help me out here, but I'm pretty sure they have some softer matchups in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think. I expect him to have good 2 or 3 weeks, RB2 plus next 3 weeks. Like, I think it looks fine.
That's kind of where I'm sitting too. I think like running back 14 is right around where we expect, and like
I think that's where he's gonna hit.
Right around where we're happy with what he's producing, right? D, I'll let you get into it. What did you think about Gurley coming in there? Like, were you cool with that being short term, or are you hoping that it's long term? And are you liking what you're seeing?
I mean, I kind of like the deal that he got on a 1-year deal, to be honest with you. You know, Gurley's not the type of back that I think any franchise is looking to get into a long-term contract with at this point in his career. You know, but I was excited about it initially. And, you know, all in all, like we said, he is about where we thought he was, but I'm not going to lie, it hasn't been that pretty. You know, every time I see him, you know, run to the outside, and he takes that hit, he's getting up slow. He's kind of lumbering around out there. You know, I think he's looked good the last couple of weeks. He's riding the coattails of this passing game. I'm not opposed to moving him at this time. If you think you can get a better piece about where he's at, because about what you've seen the last 2 weeks, I think that's about as good as it's going to get. And every week that goes by that he's doing that, you're that much closer to where the bottom could fall out under this guy. So with where he's at right now, I'm looking to move him if I'm being honest with you right now. And in Dynasty, you were doing that already, but now for sure you got to get out from underneath Todd Gurley while he's had a nice little stretch here, but if you're competing for a championship and you want to keep him in, running back's a scarce position. And Todd Gurley, like you said, he's got a chance to be there as a mid RB2 pretty much to a RB3. So, keep him if you're pushing for that championship. But if you don't view yourself as a true contender, this is the time to get out from underneath him right now.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Ty's been pounding that table for a while, so I'll let Ty get into it a little bit there.
Yeah, my bones about Gurley, no need pun intended there. It's just always been exactly that. Like, I think you guys laid it out perfectly, though, because it seems like we all did recalibrate our expectations entering 2020 in a new situation. And these guys know the Falcons really well, right? So the problem is that he is 27th in running back receptions, and it is Dirk Cutter. And my problem is they cleaned house. Yes, Atlanta did, except Dirk Cutter. I guess he's left to experience the very painful slow death. I don't know what they're doing there, but, because he will be the play caller till the end of the season, and no second beyond that, in my opinion. But the problems that pertain to the running back position in Atlanta is just that the situation, like Nick mentioned, it just offers very low rushing volume and, more importantly, really low target share in the passing game for running backs, which is that's a trend in any Dirk Cutter offense going back the last half decade or so. And then in week 6, the first game of the post Dan Quinn era, it was just 4 of Matt Ryan's 40 targets that went to Todd Gurley. So, it's not really Cutter's fault, like Nick was alluding to. It's almost built into this team because the pass catchers take precedent. 65 to 70% of the targets are just going to go to the wide receiver position in this offense. And that doesn't leave much left over for a running back. And for Gurley in fantasy, that leaves him fighting kind of running back one precedence, like it caps him in fantasy. But I think this all comes down to the running back landscape, right? Like it's hard to sell or buy Gurley because he's just a friggin' hold, because the running back position, he kind of marks that teardrop of where the position starts to precipitously fall off a cliff. So I really like what Nick said, because the volume can keep a guy comfortably in the running back 2 range. And in the rushing department, we have seen shades of the old Gurley. Like week 6 was an awful outing, but in week 5, Gurley posted his first 100-yard rushing game since 2018. And that goes same for any Falcons running back since 2018, by the way. And yeah, Gurley, I think, the upside going forward would be this offense improving. His 24 red zone carries are second in the NFL, but only 5 of those have come inside the 5-yard line. And we know almost exclusively all his touchdowns come from inside the 10-yard line. So long story short, although plentiful, like his touches, they're a little less valuable than they would be in most offenses. But Gurley is just such a locked-in running back, too, because of the position, and probably still top 15 to 20 most weeks, to be honest. And I think the other point is that his job has actually probably gotten safer in the past couple of weeks. Like, Gurley's playing under 55% of the snaps on the season still. But Brian Hill, man, he has just fallen out of favor. And that's after he kind of separated from Judge Ito and Quadriolus in this offseason. But man, he had a drop in the Bills game earlier that I'll never, ever forget. And he fumbled this past week against the Vikings. So, it could be the Gurley show in 2020. Actually, hey, Trav, it's been a while, but I got a quick Gurley either or for you.
Okay.
That was my best stained. That was my best stained.
Stained, okay? Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan Taylor or Todd Gurley?
Rest of season.
Yeah, redraft.
I'm gonna, man, that's really close, actually. I think I'm probably gonna go Jonathan Taylor, just because I see bigger explosiveness and bigger potential boom weeks coming. Really tricky though, because I think Todd Gurley could be a little bit steadier floor. But what are you guys thinking, D?
JT for me, no question.
And Nick?
Yeah, you know exactly what I was going to say. I think Gurley's going to be a safer pick, but JT's got that higher ceiling. And if I'm picking one, I want a ceiling, not a floor.
What about Ronald Jones then?
Ooh, I think I'm probably going Gurley.
I'm going to go Gurley.
Upside. Yeah, so everyone's going Gurley there.
No, I'll take Ronald. This past week, I know Fournette is, it's the only thing that really gives me pause. Gurley doesn't have a Fournette behind him. He's got an Ito and a Brian Hill. So that alone, I mean, we saw what happened 3 weeks ago when Fournette got hot. That's enough to cap the hell out of Ronald Jones' upside, and that would kind of intimidate me and perhaps make me lean towards Todd Gurley. But I mean, Rojo looked good. I've not been a big supporter of Rojo.
Me either. And I think that's
so-
why it's such a good one, right? Is because they are
And-
kind of those two guys who occupy that final tier before the running back position drops off. And I think it is that classic argument that you guys are both getting at, that it is kind of the ceiling, the big play upside that Ronald Jones comes with, the pass catching upside, and then Todd Gurley, the safe floor that you know what you're going to get. And you're just hoping for a touchdown at that point. What about Myles Gaskin? I think this one, most people would go Todd Gurley, but I would go Myles Gaskin.
I'm going Gaskin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've turned up on Gaskin recently. I actually in the multiverse league recently, I did a trade with Paulie Sleepers, and I sold him Adam Thielen for Deontay Johnson and Myles Gaskin. And,
Nice.
And that was about 2 weeks ago. And even since then, right about the time that Jordan Howard started becoming a healthy and active was right about the time that, my interest in Myles Gaskin really started to turn up.
Yep.
And like you mentioned before, I think now's the time to buy him. Yes, he's been producing, so he might have a little bit of an inflated price tag already. But with Tua coming in and Flores and the RPOs that are possibly to come with that, I think Gaskin can just become more and more valuable over the course of the next year. And what you'll be paying for him right now is peanuts compared to what he'll be next offseason.
Agreed. I think that.
And especially with it, I think you talked about it a little bit earlier. We were just kind of BSing before. It's the catches with Gaskin. He gets the reception. He's got these receptions. He's got that baked in floor. Like, you're not getting that with either of these other two running backs. You're not getting that with Gurley. You don't necessarily have that floor. You don't necessarily have that with Rojo either. I'm taking Gaskin all day.
Gaskin's seen about his target share is like the same as the Atlanta running back position right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that was all really well put, boys. And I think I would probably go with Gaskin as well, just for that untapped Tua upside, as well as, of course, like you guys said, the targets, as we predominantly play in PPR leagues. Just want to real quick say what up to Linda. She is a part of the Sons of Dynasty with D.Brown, Beezy, and the fellas. Thanks for joining, Linda. All right, fellas. So we're going to move along into the pass catchers. We're going to talk the big stud wideouts. Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, both having pretty good seasons, both top 15 wide receivers on a points per game basis. Ridley is the wide receiver 3 in points per game, the wide receiver 1 in season-long PPR. Julio is the wide receiver 14 in points per game, and I believe it's wide receiver 29 over the full season, but he's only played 4 games. So I am going to start. Ty, why don't you lead us into who for you is the guy to own out of these two for the rest of the season right now? Because I probably know what the dynasty choice is, and then kick it to one of the boys after Ty.
Okay, well, I think it would be whatever your preference is. Like, I think there's something in this wide receiver room for everybody. Why don't you just tell me which wide receiver you want? I think I would go with Calvin Ridley just for the upside. Like, I'm hoping that I didn't draft Julio Jones, essentially, and that I drafted a wide receiver who's playing as my wide receiver one, you know what I mean? So it's just an interesting conversation, because if I needed one guy in 1 week to get me 20 points or 15 points in PPR, it would be Julio Jones. But I think Calvin Ridley comes with a lot of the upside. It basically, he leads the NFL in deep passing and inside the red zone. Like, it can't get more high leverage than that, but can it continue alongside Julio, right? Ridley's been extremely efficient in close in his career, so I actually have a lot of faith in him being a high-end touchdown scorer, right? Which is awesome, because Julio isn't, and we know Calvin Ridley can score from deep. So I think the question should be, can this offense support 2 top 12 wide receivers for fantasy? And what do you think about that, D.Brown?
I mean, absolutely, this offense can support 2 top wide receivers in fantasy. I mean, coming into the year, we knew one thing about the Falcons, and that's that they were going to probably be top 5 in passing attempts all year long. And we've seen it. The Falcons are averaging 291 net passing yards per game, currently ranked 2nd in the NFL. Last week's win versus the Vikings, Matt Ryan actually became the 4th player with at least 350 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions, while completing at least 75% of his passes in multiple games in the NFL, joining the likes of Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. So, Matt Ryan time in and time out has kind of gotten dogged on for, being a shit the bed quarterback. The fact of the matter is the Falcons defense shits the bed game, year in and year out. Matt Ryan has been exactly what you're looking for in a quarterback, reliable. He doesn't miss games, capable of putting up 400 passing yards any given week. And, he's got great chemistry with these guys. Currently, Calvin Ridley leads the team with 57 targets. I don't know if there was anybody that was a bigger supporter of Calvin Ridley this past offseason. Of course, he was the Chris Godwin of last year. And, I doubled down on that everywhere. I had no problem pulling the trigger on Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 1 in startups this past year. And, it's paid dividends. And, as far as rest of season, like Ty said, you can flip a coin. As much as I love Calvin Ridley, it's probably the dynasty aspect in me leaning that way. But, if I had to pick, I'm probably going to stick with Julio Jones just due to the fact that Calvin Ridley himself has been banged up a little bit to start the year. If we were
both banged up right now.
If we were seeing consistent playing time out of Calvin Ridley, I would take him no problem. But just due to the fact of him being, showing signs of being banged up as well, give me Julio Jones. Last week, we showed you why Julio Jones is the one you want.
Yeah, Julio had a sick game this past week. That little drop back, little floater pass from Matt Ryan, that was dirty, and then Julio just hoofed it. So that was really nice. Nick, what are you thinking on those guys? Do you think that they can support 2 top 12ers, or and who are you owning?
This team can easily cover 2 top 12 with Julio and Calvin. As long as they're both healthy on the field, they're both liable to go for 20 plus every week. There's no question. This offense is built for explosion and points. If you can promise me health, I'll take Julio all year. Just because it's Julio Jones, man. Like you ain't stopping him. Like it's Julio Jones. But with the baked in risk, I'm probably still leaning Calvin because I think he still has a little bit safer on the floor with the same kind of upside. Like if you go and look at Calvin's stats, even with or without Julio, he's had either 6 catches or 100 yards in every game. That's pretty solid.
Yeah,
for a base floor, you're talking about 10, 11 yards a catch minimum, 11, 12 points plus touchdowns, which Calvin does all the freaking time. Like we've seen him just constantly score. So I'll probably lean Calvin, but if it's Julio if he's playing full health for sure. Dynasty, it's Calvin, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. I think I joined 2 startup leagues this year with D.Brown and pissed me off in both of them because he took Calvin around earlier than I wanted to get.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. But one of those I was like, I knew I should have took him.
Yeah, well, that's a money pick right now, man. That's a money pick. D.Brown, I have been on that train with you. Ty can attest to that. Calvin Ridley's been my boy since he came out, and rest of season, I'm like, I've been kind of straddling a little bit with 1 foot on the Julio train, 1 foot on the Ridley train as far as who I would prefer. I'm taking that foot off the Julio train and bringing it right onto the Calvin train now. So I'm full steam ahead with the Riddler. I have Julio in some spots, and I love Julio still, but that's where I would go rest of season if I had to choose.
For what it's worth, I would actually try to acquire Julio in a couple leagues. If you're,
that's a fair point too.
If you're truly contending, if you think you're a piece away and you can, convince who the owner is that maybe they're not contenders or maybe they're looking for extra pieces. If you can get them for a 1, I'm all day. If you can get them for a 1 and 2, I'm still doing it. If you're truly a contender, just because it's still, like I say, it's Julio and he can and would, if he's healthy, put you over the top for a ship.
Yeah, I do think we have to put that that label on there though, if healthy, because he is battling a severe hamstring injury. Not severe, but he's battling a hamstring injury, and I can't count on both hands how many times I've started Julio and not had Julio in my lineup to finish that particular game. Yeah. So that definitely factors into my decision making. But like I said, I really think that not only can both serve as top 12 wide receivers when all said and done from this point on. If any team can do it, it is the Atlanta Falcons because, Matt Ryan's second in pass attempts, just like last year, the gigantic pie funnels through the wide receiver position, but he's also first in intended air yards, first in completed air yards, averaging over 200 completed air yards per game. But I just want to bring in Calvin Ridley because he leads the NFL in air yards. Julio Jones led the NFL in air yards last year. So we know those two are going to eat into each other in that department. Where Ridley, I think, will take a hit is in that volume category. I mean, D.Brown shouted out how many targets he has. It's kind of outrageous. I think he's probably on pace for, some of the higher end seasons that Julio Jones has had in his career. So the receiving totals, I think, have to be scaled back. I mean, Ridley's still the only player in the NFL with 4 games over 100 yards this year. And those have been thanks to like the air yards and the big plays. I mean, 25 of 29 of his catches have gone for a first down or a touchdown. But I think it's one of those things that it's going to come down to your fantasy league. Like you guys are saying, go buy Julio if he's affordable, or if you can acquire Calvin Ridley for wide receiver 2 prices, I'm buying, man, because he'll see a significant share of the air yards. I also think, he's flashed and after the catch element that I kind of never gave him credit for, or at least I kind of undersold him in that facet of the game until 2020. But I'd like to see that a little bit more. But I also think he's just proved himself in the red zone, and we know he can score deep. And I think he'll command 20% of the targets, 30% of the air yards going forward. And man, that's a recipe for a top 15 wide receiver in fantasy. And I think everything we're talking about Atlanta would all be double true if it wasn't for how easy their schedule is leading up to their bye week, and then getting New Orleans, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Chargers, Tampa Bay, Kansas City after their bye week. So it's a really there's a lot of deviation in that strength of schedule, but I think everyone should be in agreement that if any offense in the entire league can support multiple wide receivers, now that we have Antonio Brown in discussions with Seattle and we have the Dallas Cowboys, sorry, Nick, just absolutely deteriorating in the passing game. So I think, go buy Atlanta Falcons wide receivers, even if they are a little bit more expensive than what the market might suggest they should be.
Yep.
I think that was well put. And speaking of Atlanta wide receivers, just to kind of wrap it in a pretty bow here, let's do a little bit of Russell Gage talk. He's had a decent little season, couple useful games. This was somebody or the wide receiver 3 role in Atlanta was
big trade.
Big trade. Nice. We'll talk about that in a little bit, Nick. Keep that one in the back pocket there. So Russell Gage, what do we think as far as dynasty value for him? Julio's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but that contract for Julio says that he's going to be around for a few years. So is Russell Gage someone that we're stashing as kind of like a spot start flex play, or do you think he's somebody that might sail off into the sunset and get replaced? D, let's start with you as somebody who's super plugged in with the team.
I wasn't big on Gage this offseason. As a big Ridley advocate, and I was even kind of riding the Hayden Hurst train a little bit. And, Hayden's kind of come on as of late. Of course, last week he had the wide open busted coverage touchdown, which kind of inflated his stats a little bit. But, everything that you want to see in a tight end as far as snaps, routes run, and everything that you're looking for, Hayden Hurst is there, and he's presenting to you. His production's been a little bit not exactly what we were hoping for thus far. But Dirk Cutter came out this week, and he said, of course, there's lots of guys that want to get fed the ball. He's like, but he said, our offense runs through Julio and Ridley, and of course we want to get Hurst more involved. Kind of speaking of Hurst, almost as the third target in line, essentially. And I think that's really going to cap Gage's upside. He came on strong at first, but then it seems like OZ kind of started coming in and gaining a little bit of that volume, and almost looked like he had surpassed Gage as the wide receiver 3. But I think Gage coming with that concussion that he had and getting a little banged up, really those guys are just kind of interchangeable at this point. I don't think any one of them really holds a lot of long-term value in Dynasty. It's the mass targets that are flying around in Atlanta that are kind of making these guys even semi-relevant at this time. Julio's locked in for the time being. The NFL is getting more creative with how they're getting out from underneath these contracts. So while a contract is a contract, that doesn't necessarily mean anything with the cap that's coming in these days. NFL teams have really just figured out ways of how they can manipulate these things and get out from underneath. So, I'm not buying in though that Ridley will end up being the alpha 1 and Gage coming in as the 2. This team's starting to look towards a little bit of a change in face. And anything and everything's possible. If you got somebody that's willing to fork over, a third or even a late second for Gage at this time, I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was definitely really well put. And it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the shift on this team with the new coaching staff coming in. Ty mentioned earlier that Dirk Cutter's probably gone after this season. So it's going to be a fun one to see kind of morph, because it feels like they're probably going to retool as opposed to rebuild. And I think they've probably got some pretty good pieces to do so with, especially on offense. So fellas, for the sake of time, I got to keep us rolling here into the next team. We're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans. They had a really nice overtime win against the Houston Texans this past week, where Derrick Henry went buck wild, and that's where I'm going to start. Nick, is this a top 5 dynasty running back despite the lack of pass catching right now? No, hey? So where do you think he is?
I do like Derrick Henry quite a bit. He's Derrick Henry. He's the king. He's crushing people. All of this, and that's great. He's going in. This is the 6 years of running back. He's first couple years still kind of fresh. I don't see it too much. I know Tennessee's going to run through Derrick Henry, but we see him disappear in games that he shouldn't disappear in, and then we see him go buck wild for 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna sell me a top 5 asset, he can't disappear at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not paying that. No, he's an elite running back. He's a great running back. When you're using your roster, you feel good. You're waiting for that 90-plus yard touchdown that he hits twice a year, 3 times a year. That's just game changers. But as far as a top 5, no, I wouldn't spend a first-round draft pick on him either. But I just don't. I think he's got this year. Next year will probably be pretty good too. But that's what you're getting out of your first-round draft pick, especially in a startup. I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah, that's totally fair, man. And that's exactly where I was sitting this offseason. Like, give me him for no higher than like a mid-second, because he wasn't going to catch any passes. I'm kind of slowly changing my tune a little bit there, just because he's showing that he's going to continue to get the touchdowns. And we do know he has that fat ceiling, even if we do have to deal with maybe a couple of dud games here or there. But it's going to be an interesting one to see unfold, because I want to see how high he can actually maintain himself without getting that pass catching. D.Brown, where are you sitting? Would you say he's a top 5 running back for fantasy football right now?
I mean, yeah, he is a top 5 running back right now.
Well, right now, yeah, absolutely.
Not necessarily for me. I've never been a big Henry advocate either. I'm all about catching passes out of the backfield. So, and Henry's, while they're trying to get him a little bit more involved, he's never really been the staple of his game. He's kind of I call him the Tyreek Hill of running backs. Same reason I don't have much Tyreek. It's kind of boom or bust a lot of the time, a little bit of a rocky road. And yeah, the Titans have been grooving, since late last year even, but their schedule toughens up the next few weeks as of now. So, it's been nice with Ryan Tannehill and co, but get ready to buckle down, because it's going to be a little bit of a rockier road over the course of the next few weeks. If you got somebody willing to pay top dollar for how Ryan Tannehill's been performing, I have no qualm with you moving him right now.
Yeah, and that schedule for Tennessee coming up is Pittsburgh this coming week, then Cincinnati, which isn't super imposing, but then Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore, Indianapolis, and Cleveland's defense, who has some pieces as well. So great point on the schedule there.
And remember, the Colts and Bears have been stout defenses. They're number really 1 and 2 against quarterback position as well. Remember that for Matt Ryan, who is famous for his dud weeks. And he has like 3 games over 28 points this year, but all the other ones are under 16 points. Oh, we're talking about Tennessee. We're talking about Tennessee.
It's all good, buddy. Yeah. It's all good, buddy.
So apply that to Tannehill.
With moving Henry, it's a conundrum, because if you have him and you're not going to move him unless you get a king's ransom, and if you want to get him, you're not paying that.
That's fair.
So it's one of those, like, Henry's kind of like Mixon is one of those ones that's you can't really make deals for because the person that wants them either wants too much or they too much of a believer, and it's just not going to happen unless you're willing to significantly overpay for a 1-year championship.
So a couple things I want to say about Derrick Henry. Number one, it legit looks like he has a cat coming out of his helmet. Have you guys noticed that? Like it actually looks like you could just see the tail of the cat that is in his helmet. So I love it.
I always call it his donkey dick.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. So if we sound picky, everybody, it's because, it blame fantasy. Don't blame us. Regardless of leading the NFL in rushing last year and scoring 18 touchdowns, Derrick Henry was not a top 5 running back last year. So I just wanted to get that out there. We all love Derrick Henry. He's an absolute punishing broken tackle, force missed tackle, yards after contact machine. I mean, since 2018, he's just dominating in yards per carry, and he runs for about 5 yards per clip. About 4 of those yards come after contact. In other words, like 80% of his yards, Derrick Henry earns like a boss man. And that's how he can score at such a high rate. Like you cited, Trav, at the goal line. He's a rare beast who converts for a touchdown, over 60% of the goal line touts that he gets. And I just wanted to mention that all that helped his team last year have a historically efficient season in the red zone. The Titans scored a touchdown once they reached their opponent's red zone in 2019 over 75% of the time. No other team hit 68%. And this year, the Titans lead the NFL in total red zone touchdowns right now. And they have 78% touchdown rate in the red zone, which is 3rd best. So this team is just unstoppable in the red zone. But it also, I think Derrick Henry's the more repeatable. The guy's going to repeat on that efficiency, whereas Ryan Tannehill is somebody who literally cannot be any better whatsoever in the red zone than what he's been in his starts in Tennessee.
Let's talk a little bit of Tannehill here, actually, boys, because I think his insertion into the lineup has been obviously the catalyst to the success that they've had. It just kind of fit together really nice. And a lot of people were questioning the overall team as well as Tannehill himself. That efficiency that we saw from last season on low passing volume has continued for Ryan Tannehill. He's been fantastic. So for me, I was pretty stoked because I had him, I think, right around a quarterback 1 coming in. And he's proving to be just that. D, where were you sitting on Tannehill? Do you have him on some rosters and enjoying what he's doing?
Yeah, I actually ended up with a pretty good amount of Tannehill this year. For whatever reason, I guess the fantasy football community wasn't buying into the efficiency that we saw last year. He was still going as a back-end QB2 in most leagues, which kind of seemed like cash. And then on top of that, we come in this year and the volume has picked up. So you're getting that efficiency and an uptick in volume from the Titans, and I've been good with it. Like I said, the schedule's about to toughen up here. So redraft leagues, I feel like now is definitely the time to get out from underneath Tannehill if you can, and other options as well. With Tannehill, I love AJ Brown, but in redraft, if I can move him for another top 6, top 8 asset right now, I have no problem doing that because their schedule gets pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. Nick, how about you on Tanny Skrill, as I like to call him? I know our buddy Will likes to call him Tanny Thrill. Just call him whatever you want because he's having a good year.
I've always been a Tanny fan. So Tanny came out of A&M, and I'm an A&M fan.
They always work out.
He was with Miami. He had all those ACL issues, and that kind of sucked. And that plus the Gase, Tyrell's favorite.
Well, he also wasn't a quarterback right away either.
Here comes the profanities as we're talking about Gase.
I want every player.
Yeah, since he's been with Tennessee, he's been nothing but fucking amazing. He's been top 3 or top 4 quarterback in fantasy since he's been a starter for them. He's legit. He's real. This is the quarterback that he was supposed to be coming out of the draft. This is the arm, the talent that he's supposed to be. He's an accurate passer. And I've got it written down when I was doing a little bit of prep is I love the way Tennessee has their entire roster built. Like they built a team and not players. Like they knew what they wanted to do and they're executing on it. They want to pound it with Henry, regardless if I believe in that or not. They have Tannehill, an accurate quarterback with a couple receivers that can fucking make plays. AJ Brown, I was skeptic on him coming into this year because I was like, there's no way he can reproduce what he did last year. I think he will. I'm done. Yeah. I believe in AJ Brown. I also will always and forever believe in Corey Davis. I'll never give him up. I believe in him.
All right, boys. So I guess I have to come in and play devil's advocate on Ryan Tannehill. I will apologize to Will in advance as well. But yeah, the Titans have just it's unrepeatable. I mean, I like Ryan Tannehill. I love converted wide receiver quarterbacks who eventually form. Like I love everything about Ryan Tannehill. I just hate the situation in Tennessee buying their quarterback. To be honest, I mean they've scored over 3 touchdowns per game since Ryan Tannehill was the starting quarterback. Like 21 points off touchdowns per game. That's up there with Baltimore. Leads the NFL since that over that time span. But in 2019, I'm telling you, he was just so efficient with the play without the play volume increasing or anything. I just think it's wild without any change to the pass to rush ratio once he took over. And by so efficient, I mean his passer rating, his yards per attempt, and his fantasy points per dropback were all some of the highest figures we've seen in the last decade, if not ever in some instances. So my point is that I don't think he's Drew Brees or Russell Wilson, but you know, I do concede to you guys that everything is still working at a really high level, right? And man, I think Tannehill should be ecstatic that Derrick Henry signed. I think the red zone efficiency is something that we're talking about in Tennessee, but Tannehill is the other catalyst on that agenda. And besides Derrick Henry, like this year, Tannehill's lighting it up in the red zone. Not on the level he did last year, obviously, but he does rank top 5 in completed passes, touchdowns inside the red zone and inside the 10-yard line. And check this out, guys. Tannehill is putting up ridiculous numbers on play action this year. Tannehill has more passing yards off play action than he does not off play action. He's 4th in passing yards off play action. He's 29th in passing yards not on play action. He has an 11.4 yards per attempt, second best off play action. He has a 5.7 yards per attempt not off play action. So just bizarre, but it's things like that. You know, it's the system. It is the efficiency that's built into this, you know, offense. And that's how he can be like 22nd in intended air yards, but top 12 in completed air yards. And I just think if it wasn't for that strength of schedule, I might be on your guys' side, but because of the play action, because of the red zone efficiency, because those are such high leverage stuff, but I just don't have the faith to call him a top 10 quarterback, right? In the last 15 games, he has only one game without multiple passing touchdowns, and those aren't very sticky. I mean, he started 88 games with Miami, many without Adam Gase, by the way, many without Adam Gase. Mm-hmm. He started 15 in Tennessee. He's averaging about 6 attempts less per game through the air, but his completion percentage has gone up about 8%, and just the touchdowns are out of control. He has a 7.6% touchdown rate as a Titan compared to 4.2% before arriving. Yes, maybe we could land in the middle at 5 or 6%, but if you go above that, you're in Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson territory, and that's it.
For sure. And I think you're dead on with a lot of those. My only qualm with it is if you look at the 5 games this year, he's already thrown for 37 or more attempts this year. He did that one time last year. So the passing volume is up regardless this year, on top of the system being ready and right for him, and they fit it around him, which I'm a fan of. The other thing is you didn't draft Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback 1.
Yeah,
you're not expecting him to give you Russell Wilson, Drew Brees. No, we're talking about Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, or Josh Allen, or anybody else's numbers. Especially in a super flex league, you probably took him as your QB3, and you're getting QB1. Bad schedule give you high QB2 numbers. So I even with the schedule. If somebody wants to dump Tannehill on me, I'm still taking him.
Yeah, and maybe that tough schedule makes them need to throw more. Maybe it puts them in negative game scripts. I think those were really spectacular points you made there.
Well, for me, I think the defensive schedule looks really bad for them, but Pittsburgh has been gotten through the air as far as yardage has gone. Chicago, I think they're around middle of the pack. Cincinnati, not great. So I think some of these defenses could be got, not in the run game. No, not in the run game, and maybe not necessarily through the pass for the Bears, but I don't know. I think they can put a little bit of something up, especially with A.J. Brown looking back healthy. Corey Davis is coming back soon too. And Johnny actually practiced this week, boys.
Yeah, I was surprised about that.
I just
want to throw out there, guys, though, they do have 5 games against top 10 opponents at the quarterback position, including 3 of those games, the Colts and the Bears. They're giving up the fewest points to the quarterback position this year. I know the Colts have had a little bit of a cake schedule, but so have the Titans, boys.
His mettle will be tested. Let's just say it'll be a good test for them to see what kind of team they are, I think, and hopefully positive for us fantasy managers who have rostered them. So we're gonna fly through the next two options on the Titans, guys. We did talk a little Jonnu there. He is on his way to a top 5 season. Like we said, we're surprised that he did practice. I thought he was going to miss a couple right off the hop. So I am monitoring that as somebody who has him on a lot of rosters. D, what were you thinking on him coming into the season, and has he exceeded what your expectations were?
I was actually pretty high on Jonnu coming in to this season. Just what we saw last year, and Delaney Walker, he was great and all, but finally getting him out of the picture was exactly what Jonnu needed. And so I was high on him. He has performed, and he is definitely flirting with top 5, top 6 tight end in Dynasty for me right now. So the play action, like Ty mentioned, has just been money. And it benefits every one of the pass catchers, and it's job security for Henry, because as Ty mentioned, that's their bread and butter is that play action, and what they need for that play action is to get Henry carries. So they're going to continue to feed him, wear down this defense. They got Pittsburgh coming up, but they just lost Bush, unfortunately. So it's gonna, while it seems like a tough matchup, Henry has a chance to pop this week, and I'm excited about Jonnu.
As am I. So boys, Ty did one earlier, and it's my turn now. Let's do a little either or. Nick, we're gonna start with you on this one, and we're starting a little slow, boys. So Jonnu or Mike Gesicki rest of season?
Jonnu.
D, Jonnu. Ty? Jonnu. Okay. TJ Hawkinson. Nick?
Jonnu.
Yeah. D?
Jonnu.
Ty?
Jonnu. I think these are like you're naming some guys I love though, for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. Me too. I'm getting a little bit wild here now with the next one.
If I could just hop in super quick, I think what we love about Jonnu is we all knew he was a yards after the catch guy. I mean, his 2018 and 2019 seasons, over those 2 years, if you put all the tight end seasons together, his seasons ranked 2nd and 5th respectively in yards after the catch per reception. We knew what he did. He's a chunk play guy via yards after the catch, but he has 5 touchdowns in 5 games. 4 of those have come inside the 10-yard line, and he had 8 touchdowns in 45 games entering this season. He's playing 80% of the snaps, so he's in there at the goal line. I know that there's a lot of jokes going around that maybe he was just holding Anthony Ferguson back this whole time. But I think going forward, Jonnu Smith has literally carved out a role that was supposed to be Corey Davis's, but he failed miserably in 2018 doing it. So I really think that.
What a mother Ferkser, huh? Okay, guys, I got 2 more, and these are getting really on the high end of the scale, but Jonnu has been fantastic. So Jonnu or Darren Waller?
Darren Waller.
Yeah,
I'm Waller on that.
So we're kind of seeing where that tier is. And the inconsistent-ish Mark Andrews, Nick, for the rest of the season.
I'm going to take Jonnu.
Nice. D?
I'm going to go with Andrews. I mean, what he's given us has been kind of aggravating, but we've also seen Lamar Jackson not really performing to what we were expecting coming into the year. So if what we've seen is his floor, I'm okay with that because I know his upside.
Yeah, that's definitely. Ty, you have been a big Andrews supporter as well. What are you thinking there?
Oh yeah, 100% Andrews, and this is 100% his floor in my opinion. I mean, he leads all tight ends in end zone targets. He's
totally
an athletic freak. Has averaged up the targets right up there. So I think everything you want from a tight end, Mark Andrews leads in, other than Kittle and Kelsey and what's his face. Yeah,
I think Waller. So that's just kind of setting the bar on where we feel Jonnu is. I think he is right in that top 5. Nick, you said earlier you will never stop believing in Corey Davis. So why don't you give me 30 seconds on why we should want Corey Davis on our rosters?
Because you get him for free still. You're not giving anything away. And you can plug it when he's healthy this year. What are you losing? At most a 3rd-round pick. You can. Most of our leagues have 2 or 3 flex spots. If you can lock in 10 to 14 points in a flex spot, why wouldn't you do that? When you're in a 12 team, 3 flex, that's a pretty deep roster in general, and you can lock in that many points, you're going to do it. Why?
I just want to see, like, I want to see those points consistently with AJ Brown on the field is the one thing that I have an issue with. But you did talk about that volume increase earlier, so maybe that is the avenue for that. We just need him to get back on the field because I want to see that offense with two good wide receivers. Also, though, I do also like Adam Humphries, but I'm not sure if he's going to be the answer. He's going to give those safe targets, but I want to see him do well.
I was going to say that earlier. Imagine
AJ Brown coming back. If Corey Davis didn't look good without him, he's looked good running routes. Exactly. He's looked good catching the ball. He's looked good as a receiver. I don't expect that to change just because there's another receiver on the field. I don't know, maybe the target volume changes a bit more in AJ's favor. It should, but he should still have a baseline, 6 targets, 4 catches, something like that, whatever, falls in the end zone kind of game. So as a flex 2, flex 3, it's great.
Yeah, Ty, were you going to put something in on Humpty Hump there?
Well, I was just going to say that, I was going to mention earlier when you guys were talking about how this offense is formed. I couldn't agree more because you have A.J. Brown. You have Jonnu Smith, who's, the shorter average depth of target guy. So A.J. Brown can kind of have a monopoly on the deep targets and air yards. And that's kind of what we've seen is that this offense will not support they just won't support multiple wide receivers. And if it is another wide receiver, it'll be in a game where a defense is playing mad zone coverage and they expect Adam Humphries to bust that, right? So I think it's interesting, the conversation about Corey Davis versus Adam Humphries versus frickin' Khalif Raymond, to be honest, because they're all being used so differently and they actually have very defined roles in this offense. And I think Corey Davis's might be the least appealing right now, but I think he's easily the most talented out of those 3, obviously, right? I don't think I'm ready to write him off as a talent whatsoever. I think his big avenue to fantasy relevance, Corey Davis's, is to fucking go in the slot, man. If he was to play more than 20% of his snaps in the slot, I would really be all over him. We've seen LaFleur do that with him, especially in 2018, man. Before A.J. Brown got there, LaFleur gave him all he could handle when it comes to target share, when it comes to snaps in the slot. Like he treated him like he did Devontae Adams, like he's treating Devontae Adams now. In Green Bay. So I think it's really interesting to see what happens with Corey Davis because dynasty owners should probably just be speculating where he goes in free agency at this point if you want like a big positive message to come out of this. But I think wherever he goes, I hope they kick him into the slot like 30% of the time because I'm not sure he's going to be able to separate a ton. He's more of just a big body contested catch guy who honestly failed miserably in 2018 in the red zone in that role. So a lot to prove for me with Corey Davis, but he's definitely somebody, like Nick said, you can go get for free, especially on a dynasty roster, on deeper dynasty rosters. He's a really good piece because he has that big ceiling, because he has that draft capital, so on and so forth.
That's what I was going to highlight from what Nick said, actually, was just the price of Corey Davis. I got him on waivers in a league that's not a dynasty league, but you can get him on waivers in some of your redraft leagues, and he can be a decent piece. And in dynasty, for me, Ty, exactly like you said, I've been kind of seeing and putting feelers out there on where I can get him for one of those 3rd round picks, just for the potential of his talent moving into another offense that's going to use him a little bit better. Like a lot of people talk about Juju going to Green Bay. If they sent Corey Davis over to Green Bay on the other side of Devontae Adams, I think that would be slick moving forward. But yeah, I think that was a really, really well-rounded breakdown of the Tennessee Titans, guys. We hit them pretty much top to bottom, the whole kit and caboodle. We're going to move into the next and last team of these team situation unpackings. And we are going to go down to Cincinnati to check in on the Bengals. They've got Joe Burrow as the number 1 overall pick, showing some poise in there. Almost took out the Colts this past week, but the Colts had a comeback on them. How about Joe Burrow? D, what are you thinking about Burrow coming in? Did you expect this from him, or did you expect maybe a little bit more bumps in that road?
No. I mean, this is kind of what we saw from Burrow in college, was that he was, willing to step on the big stage and put up big numbers. And, it's been kind of a rough road the first few weeks to get started as they're kind of figuring things out. But sheer volume alone has, kept him in the quarterback discussion. Burrow has already thrown for 300 yards in 4 games, which ties him for 4th most in rookie NFL history and puts him within striking distance of the all-time record, which is 6 300-yard passing games by a rookie, set by Andrew Luck in 2012. So, I mean, that's definitely within his realm of possibilities. And to have that on your resume speaks volume for what you're going to be capable of throughout your career. Joe Burrow's got some electric pieces around him. Boyd, a great slot receiver, and the emergence of
You can call him Ty.
T Higgins. The emergence of T Higgins, another guy who I was pretty stoked to be getting in the late first, early second round sometimes. And he's actually produced earlier than I thought. I thought I was going to have to be more patient with him, but to see him come out, and like I said, the sheer volume that Joe Burrow's putting in the air week in and week out, I have no problem firing up T, in most flex spots moving forward, along with Boyd. AJ Green, I don't care what he did last week. I'm still not putting him in my lineup.
Thank you. I love that. I think that just kind of naturally kind of moves us along into the pass catchers. Joe Burrow has been fantastic. He's he's not getting any help from that offensive line, but and maybe not necessarily fantastic, but he has shown a lot that if they can put that around him, he can be good, and they have these weapons here. Yeah, exactly. If he can stay upright, he can be elusive in the pocket. He can get out there, and he can allow them to run a really nice, well-versed offense there in Cincinnati. Ty, why don't you talk a little bit about Burrow before we get into those pass catchers? Actually,
well, I don't want anyone to blame Burrow too much. Hey, D.Brown, did you say he has 4 games over 300 yards?
Yes, he has 4 at this time.
Yeah, that makes him the only guy in the NFL with 4 300-yard passing games
this
season. But yeah, he's also been sacked the league leading 22 times, and I'm really getting sick of this goddamn system in Cincinnati running out all these wide receivers. Yes, it's really beneficial for fantasy football and all this, and yes, it breeds huge volume in the passing game. But they have to do something, like leave a tight end to chip, do something out there. I don't know what is going on there, but it's hard to watch because they're going to get him hurt, I'm telling you. And the issue is, Burrow leads the league in pass attempts, and that's great. He'll certainly become just the 3rd rookie quarterback to ever throw 600 times in his first season, but he's 8th in passing yards, and 24 quarterbacks have thrown more touchdown passes than Joe Burrow. So he has just left so much on the table that if this situation was to continue to improve down the stretch here in 2020, I definitely think the fantasy points are going to really start to come along with that. I also heard here, Nick, I'll throw it to you. What do you think about top 10 John? John Ross wants out.
Top 10 John?
Nothing for me. If the hype can get you to get a draft pick for John Ross, I'd move him.
Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to give like a 5th round pick for him or something stupid like that.
The NFL is a fool for speed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
well. What do you guys think?
Said.
Like John Ross, I think truthers would say that he wasn't given a chance. I might say that he was never healthy enough to be given a chance. And
exactly,
if they had given him a chance, maybe all I remember is the mental errors or whatever. Actually, week 1 against Seahawks last year, I remember just horrible coverage at the end of that first half of that game, week 1, and then everyone wanted John Ross. That was hilarious. Yeah.
I think he had 2 or 3 good games to start the year last year.
Did he? Yeah, at the beginning of the year.
I think he was like top 10 actually, top 10 John through 3 weeks.
So Nick, I want you to rank these wide receivers as well, because the wide receiver position is definitely where it's at in Cincinnati, right? Like the schemes, the game script, the lack of recognition that none of that's working. Cincinnati wide receivers are sharing the 2nd biggest pie. They have over 160 wide receiver targets that they're splitting right now, which is only behind your Andy Dalton now led Dallas Cowboys. So rank these wide receivers. Let me know where you stand on these 3 guys.
AJ Green is the number 3. It's not even close. It shouldn't be a question. I love AJ Green. I've always loved watching him play. Coming out of Georgia, AJ Green's a monster. Like he's just been a monster, and I hope they should, and I hope they do. I hope they trade him to a contender. I'd like to see him have a chance to go and do something. It's not going to happen with Cincy, obviously. So he's number 3. I'm not ranking Ross. Boyd and Higgins. I think it's going to come to a game by game kind of situation. If you're playing a team that shadows more, who's the top corner going to shadow? I'll take the other receiver. If it's not a top corner on either, it's just an average, I'm going to take Higgins because I think he has a higher upside. I think Higgins is a better receiver. He's just still developing, obviously, as a rookie. I like Boyd a lot. As of right now, it's 1A, 1B for me. I've got Higgins on probably close to half of my dynasty rosters, and I'm really upset it's not more. He's freaking legit. He's going to be a problem. Him and Burrow are going to have that connection. It's already been blossoming. You've seen those last 2 games. It's there. It's there.
He's led the wide receiver room in snaps back-to-back games, T. Higgins.
It's there. He's about to explode. Agreed. So after even saying that, it's not 1A, 1B. It's Higgins 1, it's Boyd 2, and it's AJ Green 3.
Well, I think you're kind of hitting on it. It's one of those things, we've talked about it a lot tonight, and I didn't get to chime in on Russell Gage, but he would fall into this conversation just a super lame version of Tyler Boyd. But these are slot wide receivers. They get away from the tough coverage. So Nick mentioned that. 85% of snaps come in the slot for Tyler Boyd, 32 of 41 targets. He's second in the NFL in both targets and catches from the slot, but 22 players have more touchdowns from the slot. So we see a theme in Cincinnati that there's just a lot being left on the table, but Tyler Boyd has to be a top 24 wide receiver, I think. And I think,
for sure,
I keep talking about how shit this offense has been when it comes to recognizing the problems that you're having here. And I thought one of the solutions, the easiest solution, would be, Joe, get rid of the ball quickly. And we would see all these slants and underneath routes, and that would all be Tyler Boyd eating that up. And so I think he has top 15 upside. But you guys, it's a 1A, 1B, 1C here. AJ Green's not dead. Number one, all 3 of these guys I think are top 24 wide receivers in fantasy. I think I'm pretty sure about that, which is crazy. It sounds crazy to say out loud that 3 Bengals wide receivers are top 24, but I'm pretty sure. So AJ Green still has no touchdown. He has the most targets in the NFL without a touchdown, 45 targets, 0 touchdowns. He scored on every 17th target in his career, and it's really crazy. Only Calvin Ridley and Adam Thielen have more end zone targets than AJ Green, but AJ Green is 0 for 6 on those end zone looks, and that's the easiest avenue to touchdown land for AJ Green, obviously just converting on one of those fucking end zone targets. But the deep balls are the other one, right? He is seeing high-end deep ball targets and air yards, but 0 deep ball receptions. And check this out, guys. The 2 wide receivers, AJ Green, it's all about deep passing here, right? But these 2 guys have had 21 deep ball targets between them, passes 20-plus yards downfield. T. Higgins and A.J. Green combined, they have 1 deep ball reception. All the other top 10 wide receivers in deep ball targets have at least 3 deep ball receptions, except A.J. Green, T. Higgins, who have 1 combined. So I think there's just a buffet of positive regression or, points being left on the table here, and any of them can see it because this pie is so big, and the scheme really just opens everything up and funnels it through the wide receiver position.
All that tells me is I'm about to go overpay for some Cincy offense in my dynasty leagues because there's no way they don't increase that O-line going into next year. I'm about to go overpay for some Boyd and some Higgins. And
D.Brown, rank those 3.
I can rank them for redraft real quick. I'll go ahead and say Boyd, Higgins, AJG. Now you switch me over to Dynasty, and a month and a half ago I would have probably had that same exact order, but now I have pause. I can kind of start to see Higgins coming along a little bit quicker than I anticipated, and just his true wide receiver 1 alpha upside intrigues me enough, along with the youth, that I'm probably going to go ahead and pull the trigger on T. Higgins over Tyler Boyd at this time. And I feel good about that. I'm a big T. Higgins guy. I loved him in college. Once again, getting him at the end of the first, sometimes even early second in rookie drafts, it was almost stealing then. And now with the production that we've seen year 1, that
buy high.
Oh man, go ahead. The volume, and like we said, what we've seen out of Burrow, while it hasn't been pretty, there might be still some people that are down on this Cincy offense, and I think now is definitely the time to get invested in that offense, including Joe Mixon. I have no problem. People seem to be down on Mixon. The first 2 weeks, I was a little worried myself. They were having Giovanni Bernard stay involved in the passing game. Of course, this last week, he vultured a short goal line touchdown. But all in all, what we've seen out of Joe Mixon the last few weeks, that's kind of exactly what I'm looking for, what I want to see out of a running back on my team. I believe in the talent. I believe in Joe Burrow and the passing volume that's bound to come with this Bengals offense. So I'm invested. I like it, and green light on the Cincy offense for me.
Absolutely. I would rank him exactly the same. Boyd, and then AJ Green, just for all the things you guys said. The big playability. Ty, I think you and I both had him as our wide receiver 3 pre-draft, if I recall.
T. Higgins?
Yeah, I think he was right in our top 3, top 4.
And full disclosure, I moved him down a little bit during the draft process because you have to factor in what NFL teams are kind of thinking. But as soon as Cincinnati came out early on day 2 and took him, I think everybody shot him right back up their board. And I think obviously with Jalen Reagor to Justin Jefferson, all this tier 2 wide, we can call him a tier 2 wide receiver, right? He was in our second tier at wide receiver. We also had guys like Brendan Ayuk in there. So I think we did really well when it comes to that. And I also want to just throw in really quickly that Cincinnati's told us who their wide receivers of the future are. It's T. Higgins and it's Tyler Boyd. They paid Tyler Boyd over AJ Green last year. I think people are still having a hard time coming to grips with how entrenched Tyler Boyd is on this team that we want to get in on the ground floor. That is the highest passing volume team in the NFL and will funnel through the wide receiver position because of all the 10 personnel that they're going to run there. So it's wheels up long term, and there's even in 2020, there's so much being left on the table. It's coming.
I think, I think that's really well said. T has been fantastic. I thought it was just going to take a little while. I have actually come around on Boyd the last year and a bit as well. I wasn't a huge fan of his the first couple seasons where he started to produce, but I'm just seeing the steady Eddie value in his production. And to see that alongside somebody who complements him so well with T. Higgins has me, much like you guys, really excited about the future for the Bengals. So boys, I think we are going to skip over Joe Mixon for tonight just because we've talked a lot of Mixon here on the True North pod, and it just pains me, to be honest with you, the usage as such a Mixon believer. So we're just going to pass on that because I don't know if my heart can take anymore. So we're going to move on to our segment. I got 5 on it with Monkey Knife Fight. And just real quick, we want to say a word about them. If you want the best DFS player prop games in the industry, jump onto Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is sweeping the nation right now, and we at True North are proud to be doing it along with them. They've got games for all sports and skill levels that are sure to keep you on the edge of your seat, with endless opportunity to watch your winnings pile up. With our promo code TNFF, Monkey Knife Fight will match your first deposit up to $50. So sign up now with our promo code and you can get up to $50 of free money to start making some bank. Again, that's monkeyknifefight.com and the promo code is TNFF at your first deposit to start playing today. Alrighty, gentlemen, we are back and we are about to get into I Got 5 on It with Monkey Knife Fight. So Ty, you are not a part of this. Nic, D.Brown, can you tell me the group that does the song I Got 5 on It?
I can. Unfortunately, I knew this was coming anyway, so I don't want to.
Damn it.
But I did know.
Thank you for watching the show, Nic.
I knew it prior to the segment, so.
That would be loonies. I think we might have to put that little trivia question to bed after this episode.
I don't even know if we're saying it right, Trav. I've said Lunas my whole life.
It's loonies.
I've been calling her crab apple.
Your life has been a lie.
I actually brought that up to my wife a week ago. I've heard that on this segment as well, and I didn't know who had sang that song. So when you said it, I still didn't know who sings that song, and so I actually came home and I asked my wife. I said, "Do you know who sings that song?" And she was like, "No," and I was like, "I didn't know either."
Yeah, makes you feel better.
Now you know. Well, now you know.
If it was Baby Blue Sound Crew, we'd know.
100%. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna share my screen here and get Monkey Knife Fight up so we can have a peek. All right. So yeah, Monkey Knife Fight. It's just a great, easy, fun platform to play on. I've been getting a lot of buy-ins, taking more L's than I want to be completely honest, guys. But the last two installments of I Got Five on It have been W's. So we got some expectations that we're setting here, guys. So don't steer us wrong. So as always, we play the more or less game. Where you have the line for the players and you decide whether they'll get more or whether they're going to get less than said line. So as I move down here, we're going to see that it's a Thursday night game. We always try and do it on the Thursday night game. We got the two quarterbacks in the Philly and Giants matchup. So we got this one's actually for fantasy points, boys. So it's a little bit different than the yardage. We switched it up a little bit. So we're going to do it for fantasy points. And the line for Carson Wentz is 18.5 fantasy points against that New York defense. So we're going to go down the list here just based on where the video screens are. Nick, what are you thinking as far as Carson Wentz hitting that 18.5 fantasy points?
I think he hits it. I feel really good about that. Actually, I've got it around 21, 22. I just don't see Philly doing it. I know, the Eagles have a pretty banged up team, but they're not going to run the ball.
Yeah,
Miles Sanders being out, Boston Scott, but that doesn't mean anything to me really. If we look at what Boston did at the beginning of the year already, whatever.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have a good game. Honestly, I think the 2 touchdowns, 250, maybe a couple rushing yards.
Perfect. D-Brown, where are you sitting on that one?
Yeah, I'm going to take the more here as well. With Miles Sanders not in the equation, that's the one guy who could really, I think, pull from Wentz's upside here. So with Miles Sanders not being there, I think we're going to see Wentz maybe with a little bit more rushing upside this week himself, and I think he can clear the 18.5 points this week. Definitely.
And Ty?
I think I'll actually take the under just because the Giants have. Well, the Giants have been pretty stout against the quarterback position. I actually really like their secondary, and I think I'll put it this way: the Giants are losing games because of their offense, not because of their defense. And I think a lot of what I agree with a lot of what Nick and D-Brown said, especially when it comes to. I think they're gonna have a hard time running the ball. They can't with this O-line. Boston Scott definitely was one of the worst starts in fantasy football history. Week 1 that really hurt, but.
Got me.
You also look at these wide receiver. I know Travis Fulgham is doing some things. I could dish some stats on Travis Fulgham, but other than that, we don't know. Like Jalen Reagor's not going to be back. Deshaun Jackson maybe suits up, but I still think this is such a depleted group of pass catchers. There's no Zach Ertz, obviously, whatever the fuck he was at this point in the last 3 weeks, but. They don't have any weapons. They don't have a running game. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have pass catchers. So I don't know what the hell they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to beat the Giants on Thursday night, to be completely honest, because the Giants are just due for a ton of positive regression on offense. So I'll take the under here on Carson Wentz, and I just can't believe people are still trying to take the over on Carson Wentz.
I am going to take the more option on this one, and I will tell you why. I sat Carson Wentz in a plethora of leagues this past week against the Baltimore Ravens defense, a bunch of them. And if I didn't do that and I had put him in over whoever the replacement is, I'm pretty sure it would have been the difference between 3 or 4 matchups, including the keeper league that you are the commissioner of, I believe, Ty. So
nice. I needed you to lose that one.
Yeah,
nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm sure you lost week 1 when you started him against Washington as well.
I did, but I
that's
think
Wentz in a nutshell. And I think D-Brown nailed it. Like if he hits this line, it's because he runs his face off, I think. And by the way, last year against the Giants, he was not so hot. He had 19.9 points and 17 points last year against the Giants.
Fair enough, but I actually do think Deshaun Jackson's going to suit up. So I mean, for that 12 to 25 snaps that Deshaun Jackson does play, I think Carson Wentz can probably hit him on a deep shot. And I do think there is some of that rushing and red zone potentially rushing for Carson Wentz if they get down close. for him to take that big body into the end zone. So for me, I think 18.5 points is pretty safe, to be honest. So we are going to take that more option there. We're going to do that order backwards. Ty, why don't you dish real quick on whether you think Daniel Jones is going to hit 16.5 fantasy points, and then we'll just move up the list there through the boys.
I think I'll take the over. I mean, the Eagles are allowing almost 20 points to the fantasy position. I know it seems weird me taking Wentz or not taking Wentz and then taking Daniel Jones. I just think Wentz, I'm going like pure process on that decision. When it comes to Daniel Jones, I'm going pure gut, baby. I mean, it's got to come here some point. He went 4 straight games from weeks 2 to 5 or whatever without a touchdown, rushing or passing, and he threw a touchdown pass in every game last year as a rookie. So I think. I mean, I know what's the line, Trav? What's the line?
16.5 points.
Okay, so he does have one game this year with over 16.5 points. And so I just think it's one of those ones where you're definitely going to go with your gut when you're making that decision. But if you look at historical data too, like he didn't have a very good outing in that last game of the season last year. I think he put up like 13 or 14 points against Philadelphia last year. So it's definitely go with your gut one. So if I was going pure process like I just did with Wentz, I would take the under, but give me that juice, baby.
D.Brown.
I'm going to go with the under here. Once again, he's done it, achieved that very thing once so far this year, and he didn't even manage to do it last week, and that was with 74 yards rushing. I was kind of buying into Daniel Jones this offseason, and unfortunately where I did, I've kind of been kicking myself. He hasn't performed well, to say the least, and I'm gonna smash the under on this one right here.
All right, and Nick?
Yeah, I'm smashing under. I'm not even needing to think about that. The fact that he can't put up, 8 points against Dallas's putrid defense.
Ooh, that's right.
His offense didn't get better since 2 weeks ago, so I'm not a believer. I like Slayton a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an Evan Ingram believer. I'm not. Tates at the end. There's nothing there for me. He's got fumble issues. He's got interception issues.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Those fumbles are historic. He is fumbling at a historic clip on a per game basis.
In the weeks 2 through 5 that you mentioned, he had one in each game.
That's incredible. And no touchdowns. Yeah. Well played.
That is rough.
I'll
That's interesting.
That 14 of 19 games in his career, he is under 16.5 fantasy points. I'll put it this way, boys. If he scores more than 16.5 or whatever the fuck his total is, he's going way over because that's Daniel Jones in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but how?
Good
D.Brown, did you say he didn't hit this mark with 74 rushing yards last week?
How do you do that?
He had 15 and change last week, and that was with 74 rushing yards.
Yeah,
that is incredible.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, that's halfway there with your rushing.
Exactly. Well, that is interesting. So between the three of you guys, I'm going to let that natural majority of 2-1 for the less option take the W. It's funny. Like I had the same gut feeling as Ty that I probably would have gone for the more option, but I'm going to leave it at less because of that majority that you guys came up with. And
I think I'm on that majority.
Yeah. And I'm going on basically nothing by saying that I would go for more. It's just a feeling. So we'll keep it at the less option. And last but not least, I posted it on Twitter today, the points per game wide receiver 1 on the season right now.
Wow.
Travis Fulgham. Yeah. Believe that. And it's funny. The thing that I put on Twitter, it says Travis Fulgham is the wide receiver 1 in points per game right now. Fucking awesome. I got like some retweets and some likes and stuff, but it was purely sarcastic because that is in no way an indictment on the Eagles receiver situation. It frustrates me so much. Just seeing him up there was like a reminder of how shitty it is. So that's kind of why I tweeted it. But I mean, he's had over 10 targets the last 2 games, put up some tutters, got a couple of red zone targets too. So it's been looking pretty good, but I did mention that Deshaun Jackson might be coming back this week. Nick, what do you think about the 13.5 point line for Travis Fulgham? Pointing up. I did.
If I'm taking Wentz at the 18.5 or more, I'm taking Fulgham. There's, like you said, 2 games, 23 targets. I'm chasing volume. He's 6 for 10, 10 for 13 the last 2 games. You give me 6 and you're 60, you're right there. Like, so if you're going to give me 10 targets, I'm pretty expecting you to get that kind of that mark. Like those targets have to go.
Totally. Ertz, Goddard, Sanders, all out. Deshaun Jackson, maybe, but he's good for what? 5 targets. Greg Ward's been a little bit spotty after looking decent-ish to start the season as far as volume. But I like that play. D.Brown, whereabouts are you sitting on that?
Yeah, I'll take the over here. Just barely, it's the double-digit targets the past 2 weeks that are intriguing. Carson Wentz, I think 40+ attempts, 4 out of 6 weeks thus far. So the volume's going to be there. The Giants secondary has been pretty good lately, locking down, especially the wide receiver 1. But I'm going to take the over. I think there's points to be had there, and Flugham seems to be the number 1 target for the time being in Philly, and opportunities just opened up more with Ertz being sidelined.
Absolutely. Ty, you've been on Fulgham since the pre-draft process, I think.
I was,
for his class.
Honestly, I'll concede that it was like a little bit opportunity. Like whatever people liked about Quintez Cephas this year is what I liked about, because he was in Detroit. He is the number 1 there, guys. Like, I love that you mentioned with Zach Ertz out there, D.Brown, because he and Zach Ertz had 50% of the Eagles' targets and catches in Week 6. Over 50% went to him, and obviously no Ertz now, so 50% going to Travis Fulgham. But and I think like he was wide receiver 2 behind Claypool, and Claypool's blow up week, or else he would have got a little more recognition that week. So he's also the first Eagles wide receiver since Jeremy Maclin to have back-to-back weeks with 10 catches and a certain amount of yardage, like 130 or 150 or something. And he's also the first wide receiver under Doug Peterson ever to have 75 yards receiving and a touchdown in back-to-back games, which I thought was really weird.
Wow.
This guy, Doug Peterson, he just wants to spread it around so bad. Drives me nuts. So the Giants are actually giving up quite a bit of points to the fantasy position, to the wide receiver position, because they're just being really stout against like tight ends and stuff. But I think I'll take the over here, because I really think that it's going to be a one-man show when it comes to Philly's passing game. I don't expect Richard Rodgers to get a lot of looks, and that's pretty much all he got right now is Travis Fulgham. So maybe J.J. Arcega-Whiteside gets in there and has a contested catch or two, but my boy Johnny Hightower probably serves as the deep threat. Travis Fulgham serves as the possession wide receiver, the red zone wide receiver, the possession, the third down guy. He's kind of going to be a one-man show.
I dig it. More. We're locking it in, boys.
Lock it.
So that's what we got. Carson
Lock
Wentz
it
at
up.
18.5. Ooh, lock it up. Carson Wentz at 18.5. We're going more. Daniel Jones at 16.5. We are going less. And Travis Fulgham, 13.5 fantasy points. We are going more, fellas. So I like it. So we're going to drop, we call it, I got 5 on it. With the on the fenceness about Daniel Jones, I'm actually going to toss 10 on there. Last week we dropped 20. I was super confident. Relying on the Giants just feels gross to me, so I'm not going to go for 20. So there we have it, guys.
Yeah, but the Eagles, relying on those Eagles this year, that's been a winning move.
Okay, Ty, it's I'm not going to be a fair weather fan, so please don't ask me to do that. That's rude. All right, guys. And really quick before we move on from the monkey knife fight segment, I just want my little friend here to say hello. This is Furious George, our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. You can order these from their store. They got some really cool gear as well, so check them out. Our buddy Nick at Monkey Knife Fight especially like to note the white loafers, because Furious George is big pimpin', baby. So there we are. Hopefully we make a little bit of cash money this week, boys. I'll let you know.
Is he stomping in his Air Force Ones for D.Brown in Atlanta?
Because I can get the stuff.
I don't know.
I
don't know what Air Force Ones are, but I do know what Air Force Ones is. So
me too, per.
I could do the whole thing, D.Brown. Don't get me started.
I'm in.
I know you are. Right on, guys. So that does it for I Got 5 on it with Monkey Knife Fight. We really appreciate them. Great sponsor, great to work with. They've it's just brought a whole cool ways for us to produce content here at True North, and it's been a fun partnership, guys. So we're getting past $1.50 here, so we're gonna rip through a couple of listener trade questions. We have got a friend of ours. He's actually another BC boy, Ty, much like we are, and his name is also Travis. So not only is he probably super handsome, he's probably extremely smart as well, strictly because of the name. You can find him on Twitter at benchmob21. And the question is this, guys. It's a really poignant one as well, in my opinion. Christian McCaffrey coming off of the IR. What do we think his trade value is? In a rebuild situation, are we selling him for multiple young assets, or are we holding? Nick, fire away, my man.
It's dependent, man.
Yeah.
Do you think you can win? Do you think?
Well, he said in a rebuilding situation, so his team is pretty bad. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, I'm selling him then.
Are ya?
If I can move them for the same value, there's no question about it. It depends on what you can get. If you can, if you can give me a mid one, a T Higgins, and another piece, a good J.K. Dobbins before the breakout, I'm in, because you're giving me a receiver that I think can be an alpha. You're giving me a running back. J.K. Dobbins was my favorite running back going into this draft.
Mm-hmm.
I think. As a running back, I think it was the best. And then you're still going to give me a pick to hit. I'll take that for a rebuilding all day long. If you can target CD instead of Higgins, done.
Oh man, yeah, that's where you take that. D.Brown, are you in the same boat? I know you got a lot of leagues, my man, so you must have seen this unfold as well in some of those.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I'm kind of on the fence with it currently, I don't know.
It's a hard guy to see go.
I mean, I love CMC, obviously his upside is top tier one, and I have him in a few spots and on some rebuilds, and I can't bring myself to sell him just because I don't feel like you're getting currently at this time the value that you would have gotten at the beginning of the season. So selling right now at this time almost seems like I'm taking a loss. And when I'm in a rebuild situation, I don't feel the need to take that loss at this time. Let him come back, let him kind of show that he is still CMC, and boom, all of a sudden you're back up in tier one value. So currently at this time I'm holding unless, nobody's really willing to pull big money on CMC right now coming off his injury. Mike Davis stepping in and performing admirably. I mean, you can't tell me that when CMC comes back, they're not going to keep Mike Davis in the mix. The way he's performed with CMC having an injury, I think they're going to look to keep both backs involved, which may cap CMC's upside at least rest of season. But as far as dynasty goes, I'm not worried about Mike Davis. While his value's down, I'm going to hold him. I'm going to be patient. I'm not looking to get out from underneath one of the top tier running backs in the NFL right now.
That's kind of where I'm sitting too, D, is that I don't think the owner who approaches me with a trade offer for Christian McCaffrey is going to want to pay what I'm going to want for Christian McCaffrey, right? Because that person's coming to me right now trying to get a discount based off the injury, and I'm not going to allow that. So basically, to partially answer Trav's question is I am not giving him any less value whatsoever, because he's going to come back and he's still going to be able to do that. Ty, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and just real quick, I want to give you a little props for something, because Nick, you talked about getting in on J.K. Dobbins before the breakout a couple of years ago in a kind of shallow dynasty league that I commissioned. Ty traded AJ Green straight the fuck up for Christian McCaffrey. And that was just before the Christian McCaffrey breakout. And Ty and I are up against each other in that league this week. He's 5-1. I'm 4-2. My team's just getting back healthy. And he's going to be missing Christian McCaffrey, which is good for me, obviously, but I would obviously like to beat him at his best because I'm going to beat him. Ty, but what are you doing as a fantasy manager who has CMC rostered? Holding, or are you trying to build some depth as far as assets?
Yeah, I mean, number one, hashtag CMC no matter what. I don't know where you guys have him ranked, but he's my number one overall dynasty player. So if this is for dynasty, then I totally dislike these conversations, like not to offend Travis number two or anything, but it really, I just don't know. Like you guys are like, nobody's going to come to me with an offer. Like what would an offer be for the top player in a dynasty?
Yeah.
Like what would you trade for the number one overall pick in your startup? Like I just don't get why you wouldn't be building around somebody who's 24 years old. He's the number one overall pick, and he's had a top 5 fantasy season in the history of the game. And the way he wins is a way that can have sustainability, right? Like he's not a guy who's going to break down with the touches. He's not going to see enough touches between the tackles to do that. I totally agree with D.Brown though, that Mike Davis definitely has to factor into the conversation. He's been that good. He's been that good, like that good that he actually curves the number one overall dynasty assets playing time, in my opinion. But I would also put the caveat in there that Mike Davis is kicked out to the slot quite a bit. Curtis Samuel is really taking a backseat in that passing game, whether it's Mike Davis or Christian McCaffrey in there. So if Mike Davis is a guy who can run out of the slot, and obviously he's been most valuable in that facet of the game, catching passes out of the backfield. So I think there's an avenue where both those two could be on the field at the same time for a good 15% of the snaps in any given week. But yeah, not trading Christian McCaffrey, you'd literally have to give me, Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Tyreek Hill. Like you'd have to give me 2 established young studs as a starting off point, because I'd need to make sure both those 2 guys are going to hit for me, or at least, that 50% hit rate if somebody's to get injured, plus a caveat of a first round pick or something, something substantial on top. The plus would also be substantial. So nobody's going to give me that. And I don't want anybody to give me that because I want all of Christian McCaffrey.
let me add this just to see where your stance is. So I've got one of the leagues that I'm in. It's actually the Suns win league. I'm contending. I have Barkley. I also have 4 firsts. The team that has Christian McCaffrey is full rebuild. I offered Barkley and a mid first for Christian McCaffrey.
I personally wouldn't do that. Like I personally wouldn't do that because you're saying Saquon Barkley will hit. He will be a number 1 or overall 2 player, which I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it could be Zeke. It could be Dalvin Cook. It could be Alvin Kamara. It could be Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2021 with Le'Veon Bell finally fucked off of the world. But I'm over it. I'm cool. But I just think like with Christian McCaffrey, I really just have a hard time finding a way that I would be able to be happy with the deal. Because I'd almost need to get like 3 stud players in return, you know what I mean? Because I'd need that certainty that I'm not trading away somebody for a bunch of people that might hit, even if it's the 101 in my rookie draft, that wouldn't increase the value that much. And I just think once you get to the point of a Christian McCaffrey, there's not much on that freaking silly trade calculator online or whatever one you use. There's just nothing that can equate to it. You know what I mean? You could put 10 pieces in there, the trade calculator will say you win, but I'll always take the number 1 overall player in the league because that's an advantage.
If I'm you, Nick, I'm offering 3 of those first round picks for McCaffrey and keeping Barkley to pair with McCaffrey to see if that person would just bite on the sheer volume of first round picks. No way. What about all 4? Fuck it. Can't
do that. I'm a known first round order.
That's fair.
I love my draft picks.
That's fair. That is fair. It's an interesting conundrum for those managers. I'm kind of on the Ty side that just because you're in a rebuild doesn't necessarily mean you have to sell that off. Being in a rebuild can be building around that guy instead of using him as a trade chip. That's obviously player dependent, but I think Christian McCaffrey is probably one of those players. But you can probably still get a lot for him. So I'm sure there are wins on that side for people as well. And some of those we might not find out for 2 to 3 years until some of those young players develop as well, right? So definitely a very poignant one with a lot of people kind of with the attrition this season, people just wanting to get Christian McCaffrey back in their lineup, or people wanting to see if they can acquire him through that injury. So we're going to get into the next trade question, guys. Another Canadian. We got dual Canadians on this one, and that was strictly due to volume in response to the call out on Twitter. So these guys got chosen. This is a buddy of ours, Jim, not True Norther Jim. This is Jimmy Lou 55 is his Twitter handle. What's going on, Jim? He's actually been a supporter for a while. He was probably, when we first started, one of the first people who reached out and told us that he liked our podcast, actually. So he is also in a rebuild in a Superflex league. This is a pretty interesting one as well. He was offered Henry Ruggs and Travis Fulgham for Derek Carr. The person wanted Derek Carr. He originally threw out getting Ruggs and a second back, but that was declined. And the guy came back at him with Ruggs and Fulgham for Derek Carr in a rebuild. So the question is, like, is that a good trade? And I think the piece that he's wanting to know is what's Fulgham's dynasty value, maybe in relation to that second round pick that he wanted to get. Why don't we start with D.Brown?
Carr has never been a quarterback that I've been trying to soak up shares of. The Raiders in general, for whatever reason, I'm just not big into Gruden and what he's got going on out there. I do like Ruggs. He was another guy that you were able to get, early to mid second, even sometimes. And, I like his upside, but I'm not a long-term believer in Fulgham, at least long-term in Dynasty, but I don't mind getting Ruggs for Carr straight up, even if I don't need Carr as my QB2 or what have you. If he's a QB3 or QB4, even if you're stacked, definitely ship him off. He was a bad start of a season and a healthy Mariota away from getting replaced potentially this season. And, coming into this offseason with the plethora of quarterbacks that seem to be on the carousel these days, I don't mind getting rid of a quarterback whenever I can. Single quarterback, definitely. Superflex, even when I can capitalize on the value of a quarterback, I'm going to do it. And I think Ruggs is a player that's going to be here in the NFL with that kind of electric playmaking ability that I'm going to want on my team years down the road.
I think that's really well said. And it is obviously your quarterback depth dependent. But in most situations, I'm probably going to take Ruggs for Derek Carr. Derek Carr is the quarterback 18 right now. And I don't think his ceiling is a whole lot higher than that necessarily in this offense. Nick, what do you think on that Ruggs and Fulgham? Like, I think the way the question was posed from Jim was in relation to Fulgham's value as to whether that puts it over the top. But I think what we're saying so far is that Ruggs alone is probably worth Carr as long as you're still stout at the quarterback position. Where are you sitting on that one, though?
Yeah, I agree with everything D.Brown just said. I like Carr a little bit more than he does, I think. By no means do I think he's special, but he's a mid QB2 to me. That holds value, especially in a super flex. This was a super flex league, right?
Yeah.
It holds value. That's probably a fair offer. Ruggs straight up is pretty square. But this is week 6, and if you're in a rebuild, you don't need to make that trade right now. Why make that trade right now? Ruggs might have a blow-up game and win a game for you. So then you have a worse draft pick. When you get to week 9 or 10 and somebody loses a quarterback, and now you get a first-round pick. Maybe you get a first-round pick and a second-round pick for Carr. I'm probably not making that trade right now unless they're willing to pay the price that I want for Carr.
That's a really good that's a good angle to look at it from, like the future need for other I
would rather leverage my assets at a higher peak time. It's the same concept of buy draft picks early, sell them for a shit ton more before the draft. I want to leverage my super flex quarterbacks, especially if he's a QB3 or 4.
Mm-hmm. Ty, why don't you fire off on this one? I think I know your feelings on Derek Carr.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's kind of nailing it. I mean, I don't think he has a finish. I think he might have one in his 6 or 7 seasons above quarterback 15 that one year with Crabtree and Amari going off. But yeah, not much from Derek Carr on a fantasy perspective. I do agree that the quarterback 15 to 20 is just exponentially more valuable in a super flex league, obviously. But I do also think that he occupies that profile of quarterback that I'm not chasing. He just doesn't come with those spiked weeks. And the irony with this deal is for Henry Ruggs to blow up, I feel like the one guy he needs out of there is Derek Carr, and he needs a quarterback in there who has a skill set that aligns better with his. And that's not the deep ball attempts, not the deep ball accuracy, the fucking trigger, man. Like, he needs somebody who has the trigger, somebody who's willing to put the ball into tight pockets, somebody who's willing to let their wide receiver do the work after the catch. So I am such a big Henry Ruggs fan in the sense of, I wish he didn't go to Oakland, to the Raiders. Like, if he was in Tyreek Hill's role, he'd be doing exactly what Tyreek Hill is doing. I think he was incredibly underrated, only behind Brendan Ayuk in this class when it comes to yards after the catch per reception. So huge fan of Henry Ruggs. We know how he can win. We know he can win in multiple ways. And I really do think that the team is kind of keyed in on him. I was actually impressed when he's been out there. I mean, he leads the NFL right now in 40-plus yard catches, and he's barely been out there. So we know how he's going to win. We know he will win. I think I'm doing that deal straight up, so long as I'm not competitive and relying on Derek Carr down the stretch here. Like, if I can lose him, even if I can't lose him and I'm 1-5, I'm still probably doing that deal and just putting Travis Fulgham in my flex, because if anybody wants to know if Jim number 2 wants to know about the second round pick versus Fulgham, I think that's an interesting discussion, because Fulgham does have some upside, right? Like, what if nobody can get healthy? Like, nobody can get healthy right now in Philly. Nobody can develop that super awesome chemistry that we're dying for with Wentz, except Travis Fulgham. So, I'm definitely willing to ride the wave. And I think, as far as my perception and getting into what Nick talks about, where the offseason kind of shifts mentalities and values all over the place, I think a second round pick is just so much more valuable than Travis Fulgham. It probably will be in the offseason, but 1 year from now, is Travis Fulgham more valuable than that player you take in the second round? Like, that's how Dynasty works, right? So that hit rate in the second round they're not super friendly once you get past right around pick 20. So I think that'll as long as you have a lot of confidence in your ability to make a pick in the second round as opposed to the third round, if you can find and battle those tiers and make the proper picks, I think a second round pick and Travis Fulgham don't have that much difference to me personally as an owner. But I do think you can obviously move that second round pick for a lot more than you would be able to move Travis Fulgham for.
Totally. Whew. That just about wraps it up, boys. I think we answered those trade questions really well. It was nice to add that element. Yeah, cutting a Henry Ruggs. Yeah, so just a couple shout outs real quick before we thank our guests and ride out. I want to give a big shout out to Viridian Global. They have powered our brand new merchandise ever since we moved over there. The stuff that we've been putting out has been fantastic. I'm waiting for a package myself. It's going to get here any day, and then I will be rocking that gear on the pods. Go to truenorthffb.com/shop or to go to viridianglobal.com to check it out. We got some new designs. If you are a part of the A team, which would be anybody who supports True North, you are a part of that team. So go check it out. We got an A team shirt there so you can represent around your city. And then real quick, I just want to mention our podcast network, because this is not the only podcast that is in the True North Pod Network. We actually have 5 in total. So there's this one. We have the Gold Jacket Pod with Connor and Jim. We've got the Smoke Show with Josh Nelson. We got the Point After with Julian and Aaron. And then we got the Jet Sweep Show on Sundays at halftime, where Will and Josh break down some of that Sunday action. So really want to drive some people towards checking out all the other podcast content that we've got at the True North Pod Network. Some really good stuff going on there. And 3 of those shows are live on YouTube weekly. So we got lots of content for everybody. And if you like the video stuff, we're definitely bringing it over here at True North. And that brings me to these wonderful fellas who came and joined the pod. Nick, it's been great, man. You can be found at Fantasy Spinoff. Why don't you let the people know what you're up to out in that Twitterverse and in fantasy football? You're a big DFS player, if I recall correct.
I enjoy DFS quite a bit. I will never give anybody advice on it. I'm not good at DFS.
Me neither, buddy.
Ty hit on it earlier. I've not been doing it much this year because of work and school, but I am always trying to push out the weekly rankings. During season kind of management, kind of my spot in fantasy. Not big in the data analytics game. I'm actually in school right now trying to learn that.
Nice.
But yeah, so trying to do more of the weekly in-season management.
That's important stuff too. Like, especially for me, like I noticed that for me, my struggle this season so far has been motivation to go into 30 lineups and do all that stuff. It's like, it's really hard. Like I'm doing stuff with the kids. All of a sudden it's 11 o'clock. I know that it takes me an hour and a half, hour 45 to get through all of them, but I got an hour till waivers run. Resources like that are ones that can help people who want to get some quick snap stuff. So Twitter is the place for that. And Fantasy Spinoff is one of the accounts that can help you do that. So we really appreciate your work, Nick. We really appreciate you jumping on. And this won't be the last time, buddy. We'll get you on again soon. And D.Brown. You are rocking at the Sons of Dynasty. You can find them at Dynasty Sons. Find D at DBrownFF88. What are you up to, my man? You always got your fingers out there in a bunch of cookie jars, and you're always pumping out that Twitter content.
Man, I've been dabbling like you. I'm juggling these leagues. Last year the numbers just skyrocketed exponentially. And I did pretty good this off season. I tried to stay true and not get into any. I actually got out of one or two. I didn't quite get out of as many as I got into, but I'm right there hovering around that 30 number with you. And it is a headache. I got all my paid leagues up at the top and I got all my freebies down at the bottom. And I start at the top every week and I work my way down. Sometimes I get to the freebies, sometimes I don't. But I enjoy it. I love it. And I even find times to go in these leagues and look for trades, man. I mean, and you talked about waiver wire, that's necessity. You're talking about going in and looking at guys' rosters and seeing what they need. You don't even have time to think about what you need yet. You're supposed to look at what they need so that way you can manipulate the system. I mean, so it's crazy. Like you, I got little kids running around. I'm trying to get my time in with them. I got home today. I was out in the backyard for about an hour and a half with them. Kicking the soccer ball around, enjoying this great fall weather down here in Georgia. And, I'm loving every minute of it, working hard, trying to stay engaged on Twitter. I've made so many close friends such as yourselves in this industry. And, I live kind of out in the boonies, in a real secluded area. So having guys like you and other guys like BZ, Brother Matt, Linda, just in my DMs, literally it's like I have friends around me at all times. And as much as I love fantasy football, I just love the community. I love being able to talk ball with guys that, I feel like I've known my whole life, that, and just being able to connect with people is, and get DMs from people and try and give back to anybody and everybody. If you want my advice, I'm going to give it to you. When it comes back wrong and you come back and, I get DMs saying all sorts of bad things, but
delete your account. Well,
I love it. I love it, man. I'm here for the people. I'm here for you guys. True North literally has been one of my favorite content providers since I really started diving into the dynasty realm. And I'm here for you guys all the time.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. I would echo that exact sentiment that the community is just the best part, man. Making friends like you guys has been fantastic. Like me and Ty were just getting started, a couple episodes in. Our podcasts were probably fucking awful. And it's people like you guys who we were able to bounce some shit off of and ask questions and get feedback from, who really helped us along in kind of figuring out what direction we wanted to go. So Ty, I would think you would probably echo that sentiment as well. Hey, buddy.
Absolutely. I just think what it does for me is it's just an outlet. Like, you think my friends and family are going to entertain my thoughts and opinions about football? Yeah, wrong. But I need this. I need this, man. So yeah, I
Yeah.
can't thank you guys enough. D.Brown, you've been one of the kindest to me on Twitter, and I have a hard time kind of cultivating those relationships sometimes. I don't know why, but I've always, it's just one of those things where I have never been great at the internet. Sue me. I wasn't great on MSN, wasn't great on ICQ. But I'm learning, and it's all thanks to you guys, for real. Like people like you, D.Brown, people like you, Nick, for real.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said, my man. So with that, I think we can ride out on a happy note. Again, Nick D, really appreciate this, and this will not be the last time. So we'll keep that DM group hopping, and we will plan something for the near future, boys. So thanks again to anybody who checked us out. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel, the TNFF Network. Check us out on all your pod platforms. Find us on Twitter at TrueNorthFFB and at TrueNorthFFB.com. Until next week, Trav and Ty. Peace.
Fuck Trump.
Mm-hmm.